Okay, fine.
Hello, Rolf. Good morning. Hello, Maisa. Good morning or good afternoon. I am Rodrigo Estrada. I'm the festival coordinator. Scott will join shortly to explain to you a little bit what are we going to do. But basically, you will be spotlighted whenever you spoke, like I'm doing right now. So you will be in screen. He will talk first to one of you about your movie. We will be showing some of your movie while he does that. Then he will talk to the other one, and then he will take a conversation with the three at the same time. After that, we will have a short Q&A with the interns. They will make some questions about your movies or some things that they think you could give an advice that is important for filmmakers. And basically, that's going to be it. I hope you have fun. And Scott will join us in around 3 to 5 minutes. Okay. Do you have any doubts so far?
Sorry?
Do you have any doubts so far?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
واحد اثنان ثلاثة أربعة خمسة ستة سبعة. Nobody wants to count to the rest from 7 in Arabic for me? Hey, Rolf, how you doing, man?
There you go. Pretty good. How are yourself, Scott?
I'm bloody great, mate. Bloody great. It's good to see you. Happy New Year, and I hope you had a good break over the holidays.
Yeah. And you were in Paris?
I went up to the Alps and did a bit of skiing with my wife and daughter, and my wife very unfortunately busted her knee on the first day of skiing, so it was just one of those fun things. So, but anyway, whatever. So it was all good. And Mesa, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. I don't think we've actually met in person, have we?
No, we haven't. Even though actually I don't know if you're in Paris right now, right? I was there a few weeks ago.
Well, thank you for calling and coming and buying me a coffee and a glass of rosé.
Next time, I owe you one.
And where are we speaking to you from today?
I'm based in Qatar.
Qatar. Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Excellent. I've spent a little bit of time there as well, which is very nice. And Rolf, where are we speaking to you today from?
From Oslo. So I'm in the cold in Norway here.
It's nice and sunny there at the moment, right?
Yeah.
I actually went surfing 2 days before Christmas about 10 years ago in the Arctic Surf Club up in the Lofoten Islands.
Yeah, I think it's all.
Yeah, I just tell everybody about the Lofoten Islands. I'm like, I should be paid as the Lofoten Tourist Commission.
The Lofoten ambassador.
So as Rodrigo says, Rodrigo obviously runs my life here, and all things great and good from ÉCU stem from Rodrigo, a Mexican superhero. This is going to be a very, very easy, cash conversation. We do have an audience for this, and it's a good chance, I think, to talk about you guys, your films, and also, just give some guidance. Everyone has a podcast, everyone has this, but you are from not just us, but around the world as award-winning filmmakers. And I think it's always good to be able to share stories. I mean, I run a lot and I exercise a lot and I listen to a lot of things. And I think that, I'm thinking that you guys will definitely have stories that will interest people. And so we're just going to have a very, very casual conversation. Obviously, it needs to be a win-win for everybody. And we'd love to talk to you about your films, about your experience and whatever, and then just give them some tips. We had a film in our film festival a few years ago called Thunder Road, and I'm not a casual Bruce Springsteen fan. I'm a rather annoyingly obsessed one, and it was about a Bruce Springsteen song and went on and on and on. And the filmmaker got Springsteen's permission to use it in a short film, and then made a feature and couldn't use it because it was too much. But he just said, filmmaking. The only way that you become a good filmmaker is knowing what it's like to carry heavy silver boxes upstairs. And as soon as he said that, everybody in the room went, know what you're thinking. My staff are in love with my heavy Pelican light case, aren't we, staff? No, yes. Every time that beast comes out, they break into hot sweats. So yeah, we know what it's like. So I just think that we've got 20 young independent filmmakers working for us right now. Rolf, you've seen them, you know what they're like. And I think it's just, those things that you wish you had have known before you went in. Maybe you wouldn't have gone in, but then you learn and you get the experience. But I think it's always a good tip. I yell at my staff all the time. They think I'm some weird little Australian tyrant because I refuse to let them hang cables over the side of the desk and all that stuff. And they go, "Oh, you're so annoying. You're so boring." I'm like, do it on a film set, they'll fire you. There's a cable running on a thing, they'll fire your ass. And they're like, yeah, whatever. And they still do it every single day. I have to tell them not to do it, but they still do it. But you know exactly what it is. If you're racing around on set and you trip over a cable, you're going to hurt the cameraman, you're going to hurt the actress, the director's going to whatever. They'll just fire you. Yeah. So, back me up on that, guys. And that way they may think I'm a little less of a cable Nazi.
No cables on tables. Got
it. Cables on floors and tables. And the other good thing that they learned, we've got 6 minutes and I'll jump off in a second, but the other thing is coffee cups on tables around edit suites and hard drives. Every single year, somebody at this table does it. They lose their computer and hard drives. And I'm like, I beg of them. And
it shouldn't be done.
Yeah. Yeah, you can call me when you lose that hard drive with your mostly finished film and you haven't saved an XML. Yeah. Good. Okay, so I'm going to bounce off here for a second. I'm going to make a cup of tea. But we will go definitely live at 1 o'clock. We will, as Rodrigo says, we'll be playing little snippets of your films and we'll talk about, we'll promote your films up front and thing, and then we'll delve into the thing. Okay? Great. So I'm going to be back in about 2 minutes time.
Brilliant. Good. All right.
Hi everybody, my name's Scott Hillier. I'm an independent film director and president of ÉCU, the European Independent Film Festival. This is our first ÉCU Friday Live of 2023. My goodness, it's hard to think that we're in 2023. And we've got two very talented filmmakers who are joining us today. And we're going to be talking about things you wish you had known before starting your journey as an independent filmmaker. I think that many of us in the industry, if we had have known what we were going to be getting into, we may have re-looked at our career paths. But as you'll find out in this discussion today, the path of an independent film director is tremendously tricky, difficult, and insanely rewarding, because when you see your film up on a big screen and you can hear the reactions of the audience, it makes it all worth it. Or does it? So as mentioned, this is our first for 2023. So I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year, happy, prosperous, fun-filled, and keeping everything indie, because we firmly believe here at ÉCU that the independent spirit of creativity just makes the world a better place and enriches our souls. So enough about me. We're going to introduce our two directors. Firstly, I'm going to go to a filmmaker that was in the Arab Special Selection here at ÉCU in 2022, with a film that made you scratch and be a bit uncomfortable at times, which is what films are supposed to do. They're supposed to create an emotional response. And Meza, who directed the film J'ai le cafard. Very, very great pleasure to speak to you today, because we loved your film, and as I said, you put the picture and the sound in the right place to create an emotive response. And so I'd love to talk to you a little bit. First of all, welcome and Happy New Year. But I'd like to talk to us a little bit about your film that competed at ÉCU 2022.
Yes, so J'ai le cafard. It's a film that, you know, that it took many years to. I think it actually started. I think I was about 12 when it first started in my head, which was the reflection on this phrase, this expression of French. In my French class, my French teacher said, you know, introduced us to this phrase that meant, you know, I have the blues. And I just thought that was such an incredible imagery for a particular emotion, and it really stuck with me. And, you know, as I got on with life, and when there's moments, you know, when the roach comes into your life, you kind of, I just go back to that phrase. And funnily, actually, the film is semi-autobiographical, because there was like one crescendo of an event in my life where I felt so down, and I was working in a corporate office, much like the one that's in the film. And I did see a cockroach in the bathroom that was struggling, and, you know, it was on its back, and, you know, I knew that it was dying and it was struggling, but with that struggle, I looked at it and I thought, you and me both, buddy. and that's where that film was stopped.
So we're going to play a little bit of the film as we talk about this. But what I have in front of me, and one of my cheat sheets, is that the actress wasn't a big fan of cockroaches. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so, you know, she a lot of people had sent me in their reels, and I was very struck by this actress Ines Fellal, and she just physically embodied everything that I was thinking about in terms of who should play this woman. And so I knew that I wanted to offer her the part straight away. So I sat her down and I said, I'm not going to even give you an interview or an audition. What I want you to do, I want to offer you this role. She hadn't read the script yet. I hadn't shared the script with anyone. I just, you know, had the descriptions of who should apply for the audition. And I said, how do you feel about working with animals? And she's like, yeah, I like animals. And I was just like, well, how about pretty small ones? She's like, yeah, cute, nice. And it was like, well, insects. And she's like, hold on, what are you talking about? And then I told her, listen, the one of the main characters in the film is a cockroach. And she said that she has this huge phobia phobia of roaches. So we had a conversation about depression and what it feels like to feel unfulfilled and all of that kind of stuff. So by that time, her and I had formed somewhat of a rapport. And then I explained the film, and then she said, you know what, this is so mad, I think I want to do it. And I told her that I would give her as many hugs as she wants in between takes. I'll give her all the time that she needs if she needs a break. And she went for it, and she was an absolute champ. She was terrified, absolutely terrified. But, you know, with every time I asked her if she was okay to have one more take, she was on board. So I'm really pleased with that. She feels it's like one of the biggest achievements, rather than the film itself, was the fact that she actually did this with the roach. And we did have live roaches in there. We had a cockroach handler. So, but you know what?
She also had to go to share a bed with one and a bathtub. So very good director to get that.
But you know what? She wasn't the only one on set that had a phobia of these roaches. Half my crew on set made them, a lot of them disappeared off set. Once the cockroach handler came in, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. It was like everybody was like making waves, just like, don't come close. Here comes the roaches.
I see the film is now on Netflix in the Middle East, which is a great achievement. So congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, yeah, that happened through the distributors that I signed on with, Mad Solutions. So I think the group of films that was selected on Netflix
On the
was
table.
She Creates, I think, because She Creates, and it's a group of Arab women filmmakers that were selected to have their films on Netflix. So that's nice to be able to share it with a different kind of audience, because with a film being, it straddles genres. It's not a horror film. It's magic realism. It's kind of drama. It's melancholic. So it was, when it came to the festival circuit, it was very difficult to you have to know which festivals to apply for, and so I found this film did very well in genre film festivals and horror film festivals, actually, as well as some really interesting A-class festivals. But it's the smaller independent film festivals that I think I'm very proud where I got into. So yeah, so with that, knowing the way that it was doing in the festival circuit, I didn't have much faith that it would be a film that would be interesting for a platform like Netflix, but I was proved otherwise. So that was fun to see.
No, that's great. We here at ÉCU, we love seeing success stories with well, we're going to call you our alumni, because you definitely are, and we can't wait to look forward to greatly your next projects. But now I'm going to move on to Rolf, who's sitting up there in hot and sunny Oslo. Rolf, we did meet at the festival. You came in to utmost professionally to make sure that I played the sound correctly in your film. And I think that you had a stick hidden away in your bag just in case we weren't doing a good job, but we did a good job because you did a good job and it all worked fine. But Rolf, you have a rather eclectic background as an independent filmmaker. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I guess that's my my speciality, that I have sort of a diverse background. So I went to med school, and then I segued into different kind of jobs before I did a bachelor in archaeology, and then I ended up in filmmaking, doing a master's at the London Film School. So it's just it's following different interests and fascinations that drives you to different places. But I think it's sort of underpinning something I'm very interested in, and it's in observing the complexity of the world and trying to delve into that complexity, and also to reproduce that into filmmaking, to see things from different angles. So I guess that is, if you can say that in such a way, that's my strength, that I have all these, I can look at stuff from different angles, and try to, like I said, delve into that insane complexity I feel I see in the reality I'm immersed in. I see all these sort of facets that I'm really interested in displaying more.
Well, I find your multifaceted personality and the path you've taken, it comes up very much in your filmmaking. You won an award at ÉCU 2022 as Europe's best independent experimental film. Tell us a little bit about your film, because it is a strange, lovely, weird, multifaceted cacophony of craziness with great sound. So why don't you talk us through a little bit of it as we see some of it?
Yeah, I think it is, like Maisa said, it's some films can be difficult to program, because it's not a horror, it's not this, it's not that. So for me, it was different elements coming into my head early in the stage, where at one stage you have like this character that's roaming around in a neighborhood. And another idea was to work with sound, and what can we do with sound? Because I always felt that sound was so underused in films, and I always felt I had sort of a good understanding of the image and the image's power, but to use sound in an interesting way, and how much can we, the image shows the world as it is in that little frame, but the sound can really get the whole world that's outside of the frame into the film, and how can we play with that? And I guess the third element, it's more of a comment on film itself and films that I love. And it's those films that has this, they're fragmented. They don't tell you the whole story. It's like a puzzle. You have to put pieces together to make sense of the whole thing. So I was trying to make a film that was balancing this knife's edge between being a mental framework, a puzzle for an audience, and also, but not being boring and not being vague, not being, so people don't, sit back, but they lean forward, being interested. So trying to play with those three elements and creating a cohesive film, basically.
Yeah, no, it definitely worked, of course, and it worked for us in the office, and then our submission judges, and then most particularly in the cinema where it's on a big screen and big sound, and there's every time that working with soundmen. If there's any soundmen listening to us now, I love you, but you drive me insane at every available opportunity, because we need them. We need them very much. But just before you're doing the most important take of the day, the batteries always run out, or the boom's in shot, or whatever. But again, we love you, because without good sound, people are going to say, yeah, those pictures are out of focus, or the lighting's bad, or whatever. So you captured that very well. But why don't we move on to the topic of what we're going to talk about today, and that's things you would have wished you would have known beforehand. But I might dig a little bit deeper into that, and I'm going to talk to Mesa about this. And it's a very good question that those staff have come up with. It's like, what is some of the advice that people gave to you that you basically ignored or didn't take full account of and wished you really had of in this crazy world of independent filmmaking? Is there one particular piece of advice that stands out to you?
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I've got to explain a little bit. I'm a little bit like Rolf, as in film wasn't my background. I'm an architect by training. I'm a professor of art and design, and I worked in a few corporate offices. I had my own architectural office at one point when I lived in London, and then I got into film very much later on in life. So ÉCU Friday is actually my first large film with a crew. Before then, it was just a group of friends and with a camera and stuff. So in terms of advice, I wasn't, I was taking. I was building up. I was never given much advice because people never really thought of me as the one who was going to go into film. It was just like, oh, she's the one who's just with a little bit of an interest, and that's it. And so I had to go on this giant journey on my own. And when COVID happened, I was lucky to shoot this just before COVID. And so, but then when it came to the editing process and distribution process, I was sitting on my own in my living room right in front of this computer. And I had to learn a lot of it along the way. And I think I found that just like my film, I myself don't fit in one particular expected category, because I'm a Kuwaiti that's married to a Finn that lives in Qatar. I'm from a country that doesn't have film funding. I cannot apply for funding in Europe, in a lot of European countries, because you've got, for some reason, filmmaking becomes quite political when people want to hand out money. There's, we are independent filmmakers, but then there are people in the film industry who want to see it as an industry. So you find with every step that you're bound by an obstacle that's completely unrelated to you, or the fact that you don't relate to it. So what you find is that just on a practical level, you're up against a lot of closed doors. And then you just have to bang down all of them and see which one opens. For example, this film, ÉCU Friday, was shot in in Egypt. That's where I travel a lot to, and I built a network of film crew and filmmakers out there. And so one example of an obstacle that I came up with that no one could have told me was when you're an independent filmmaker, or even actually in Egypt generally, the film culture is that on the last day of shoot, when you say it's a wrap, there's a queue of people waiting for their money to be given to them immediately, like they're still on set by the producer, and you hand out their paychecks or their money. We had no idea. And as independent filmmakers, we know that we are the producers, we are the editors, we are the screenwriters, we are the directors. You have to put on all those different hats. And so you become partially responsible for that. So there was like a scramble of how much, how do we get that money right now, right here? And then you realize that the ATMs for foreigners in Egypt, you can only take out 10,000 Egyptian pounds, and that's only a fraction of one person's pay. And there's a limit to how much you can withdraw from the ATM on that one day. So like from day one, I was behind on everyone's payments, and it's just bad form. So in terms of like advice, I would say I wasn't given this advice, but I wish I had been given this advice, that wherever you do shoot, there's a different filming culture. So yeah, do a little bit of research before then. Don't just assume that what you know it's that's how it's going to happen. And my next film, I've got one film that I want to shoot in Finland, hopefully at the end of this year. So I'm already kind of everything from like, I don't know, I shot J'ai le Cafard, which with what I thought was an extremely generous budget. Extremely generous. I got 2 grants, I got a little bit more funding here and there, and I think it was about $35,000 to shoot that film. I thought that was really, really generous, and in Egypt that goes far. And then when I go to Finland and they say you need about 100,000 euros, my jaw drops. So all of a sudden, I think the film that I can make is something that I can't make, and I have to find another way to do it on a shoestring budget. So yeah.
Fake snow in an Egyptian studio would be my suggestion, but that's
yeah. For example, and check the ATM situation before you.
I just wonder how long you were held hostage until those ATMs just clicked over from day to day. Rolf, I'm going to move on to you. And again, I have to say I'm feeling rather intimidated by being around such multifaceted filmmakers who make such great films from such diverse and weird and wacky backgrounds. But Rolf, talk to me about has there been any advice given to you that you went, nah, I'll be fine, and then you went, oh, I really wish I had have listened to this?
Yeah, I think I'll take another angle at it. For me, it's what was interesting. It was like the way I was trained at school. It was very much to see film as a marketplace. And for me, the thing I really wish I knew before was that film isn't only that it could be more of an art as well, and that's a way of thinking about art that you don't do with film. So I remember in film school you get a lot of advice on how to act in the industry and I thought that was just something, this is what you had to do. But I realized later this is advice that's more given to you if you want to conform to the accepted rules of market filmmaking. So you have to walk around and saying you have this film in development, and you have to be a bit of a salesman, and for me that's that you realize that you're not that good at that stuff. But when you realize you can make film in another way, in a more artistic way, you find yourself going more along a path of your own motivation, and then you can talk about film and about your project because you really believe in that, not because you're trying to talk about something you have no idea what it is, but you're desperately trying to adhere to some you have to fake your way into being this guy that made all these feature films. And I find it much more easy when you can just find that thing that really motivates you and that really interests you, and then you can talk about that, and then other people around you would sort of just pick up on that, like like ÉCU, like, oh, this was interesting, and then you do that as opposed to listening to all the advice about how the marketplace works.
I think that's the one thing. I've been an independent filmmaker for a long time now, and I definitely, that's what ÉCU is all about, is shining a light onto those people who just say, this is my film and I'm going to do that. I don't have a marketing, I don't have distribution. It's a film by X, and you stand behind it and you love it and there's passion. And we get a lot of films here every year, and for me it's quite easy to see the true independence because it bleeds off the screen. It's not following conformity, one, in the way that it's been made, then marketing and whatever. And it's not an easy path, as you both know. But my goodness, when you've got the passion, if only we made money on our passion, we would be fine. But I go off and I make big films for other people and whatever, and there's slightly less passion, but there's money. But it come back and you spend that money on the festival, bringing people like you to Paris and sharing your stories with our audiences is huge to us. But for me personally, just the idea that I can, we have this conversation in the office a lot. It's just like, an independent filmmaker, they ask what the definition of an independent filmmaker is. And it's one willing to be bare ass naked up on the screen, be vulnerable, be riven by a lack of self-confidence and self-doubt, but here's my story. And it generally always just comes down to one or two people behind that story. And that's what happens. But
I love what you're saying. May I add to that a little bit?
Please.
In that, this is why I said, when you said in Netflix, and I was just like, oh yeah, that was mad solutions, because why I brought that up is because I got no clue how to get a film on Netflix. I had no clue how to distribute a film. I did it myself. And so when I got onto the festival, and some festival distributors were contacting filmmakers, the first thing I asked was, what is a distributor? And why would I want it? And then they explained to me what they are. And I was like, well, I've already done that. So I'm the distributor. So, and then it was just like, so what do I need that person, this company for? And they were like, oh, the logo. And I was just like, what does the logo do? And I said, and I gave them the film. And, it's just like, and then I had to learn what contracts are and what their cut is. And then all of a sudden your film, somehow people are like tearing little bits of their, of the limbs of your films. And somehow, and then you kind of got this, yeah, it's just, it's to, I think what Rolf touched on this, it's that, when you see what the industry does and what the whole market does to a film, and you kind of think, maybe I don't want that. With a film after that, I decided, let me try actually going to a distributor right from the get-go. Like, I'm not going to stay at my computer and apply on Film Freeway and God knows what for all of that. Let's see what they can do. To be honest, a quarter of what I did.
Yeah.
I achieved a lot more for my film than a distributor did. Maybe, again, I make films that don't sit nicely in any categories, but your film best.
Yeah, I think that and you pay 30% of any money that they bring in for the pleasure of that as well. And my bit of advice here is, again, why I go off and I do my thing and I get money and I do it because I've also, I worked for National Geographic and Discovery Channel and had those people involved from the very beginning of my films. And my goodness, you talk about cutting the limbs off the film, but that's after you made it your way. I've had them on set making things their way. They're like, well, we're paying for this, so you will cut out this, and you won't have somebody in a red dress, because my ex-girlfriend had red dresses, and I'd just be sitting there going, oh my goodness. So, you know, and that was on a very small scale, but I can only imagine what it's like on a much bigger scale. So, yeah, the distributor before is good, because I guess you get some money and you get some less stress there, but the stress of losing any creative control, even a tiny bit of creative control, bugs the heck out of most of us independent film directors. And I like what you said, because, you know, and again, we're surrounded, the ÉCU staff here, a bunch of, you know, young, enthusiastic, you know, storytellers, and we'll go off and do these things, but it's not just a thing of writing a script and making a film. There is a big back end there, a big back end that they have to be prepared to take on. And a very, very quick story. I went off to Africa and shot my very first. I got out of NYU, and all of a sudden I've got a film camera, and I've been all around the world 10 times anyway. And I'm like, I'll make a documentary in Africa. And I made a documentary in Africa. So I went off there and I did this and I did that. And I came back and I went to Cannes, and I got my little can of film under my arm, and VHS, you know, things. And I'm like going in there, and some people would meet me and some people wouldn't, and whatever. And I remember it was near lunchtime, so I know exactly what the execs were doing, drinking rosé and down on the beach and having a great time. And I got the 19-year-old intern who's like going, rolls her eyes and says, okay, yes, I'll meet with you. You know, Bill and Jack are away. And so I put the VHS tape in, you know, got in there and played the opener and got to the thing. And after about a minute and a half, she goes and hits the pause button and says, so Scott, you filmed this in Africa, right? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, where are the animals in this frame? And I'm like, well, you know, there's 25 frames in 1 second, you know, so maybe. She said, well, there's no animals. Of course, we can't take a film. We wouldn't ever accept a film from Africa that doesn't have animals in it all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, thank you. So, yeah, that was my first distribution. I walked away with the distributor at the end of that thing, but that stuck with me for a long, long time, that one. Yeah. What else have we got? We talked pre-recording about heavy silver cases up boxes. What's another thing that, you know, you sort of learnt during this shooting process? You thought, that wasn't part of the in the memo that I read about being an independent film director. Rolf?
Well, basically, listen to what we're talking about here. Something popped up in my head that was, it's like, well, this is obvious. I don't have to even think about this, but I completely realized that you have to be in control of all aspects of what you're doing, from pre-production to writing, pre-production, filming, editing. You have to have a mind frame, so you don't have to do it yourself, but you have to know what's happening in all the different departments. So like Maisa said with distribution, you have to be on that, and really be interested in that, and freaking out on the little details, and that's just a starting point for making films. You have to be sort of on that level, which is the thing that goes without saying, really.
Yeah, but again, when you're 21 years of age and making your first film, which is what I was, you had no idea.
No clue.
You'd make the film, you'd turn up and go, well, buy this because it's obvious it's made by a genius.
So this is the stuff we realize when we're talking together, and somebody says, "Oh, you have to be that much like on it." Yeah, that's obvious. So that's you just sort of you take that for granted because you're constantly freaking out on details and like you were talking about. I always make sure that my film screens properly at festivals, and so what happens if it doesn't do that? Then of course you have to bring it back up, and you have to bring that back up, and you have to know the people in the booth. You have to befriend those guys and understand their jobs and understand what's difficult with them and the time frames they have to do stuff. So you can't eat too much of their time. So keeping an eye out and understanding what other people are doing as well. So most of the time they want to help you, but they don't have much time. So how can you help them help you? I know.
And also many of the times, I'll take that from renting equipment to the driver who drives your equipment to the people that sillily let you film in their house. going all the way to the guys in the booth. I befriend all of them because I've been in all of those situations, and I've also seen them get messed around and treated badly, yelled at, screamed at, and whatever, just doing their job. And I find that, you know, renting gear, working in a rental house, I think is must be the hardest job ever, because very rarely are people nice to people where they rent gear from, because there's always something broken. There's every Christmas, I went there Christmas just a couple of weeks ago, I went and I dropped off a 6 bottles of champagne to my rental company. And they were sort of in shock, and to the point of, like, one of the girls teared up and she's like, you do this every year, but nobody else does it. And I'm a tiny client for them. But also at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you have to shoot in 5 hours time or whatever, these poor buggers have to get up. One, you should be nice to them, and you should actually give them a glass of champagne at the end of the year. And so many people just don't get that. And I think as an independent film director, that type of business and that kind of advice is be nice to everybody. That security guard that people are real dicks to or whatever, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he's going to let you get in and get your hard drive because you've spilled a cup of coffee over the other one at home. So, I think being nice is a good thing. What about you? Oh, sorry.
Along the lines of what you're saying is that don't give the crew pizza as a meal on set. They've worked really hard for you and you're asking for 12 hours, 13 hours. And then, you know, when you feed everyone pizza, it's not kind and it's not nice. And it wasn't my choice to bring pizza on set, but there was a lot of grumbling on set because the producer brought in pizza as the meal. And so, because people need to get back to work, and, you know, you need to keep the good vibes as much as you can on set.
I'm a tiny little cook, and I cook occasionally for my staff. I used to do it a lot more, but I cook on film sets.
Nice.
And because I think that the idea that you can put a lasagna the size of the table on a table with a couple of bottles of wine during a thing, you get more ideas, people will comment, and all of a sudden the grip says, well, what if we did this like this? And I go, holy shit, why didn't I think about that? Half an hour, I tend not to have hours on set, but I'll cook for them, and you'll get more out of that half an hour, 3/4 of an hour feeding people than you will by bringing in a ton of pizzas and giving them out. So that's a little bit of advice for me. Just
didn't happen again.
We like to think we can do it all ourselves, but we do need a lot of other people, and the result is up on set when you can actually see that people are willing and follow your passion, see your passion.
Absolutely. That and you know, what's that silly phrase that they keep saying, don't work with animals or children on set. Don't work with puppets on set. The puppet was the biggest diva on my set, and it delayed our shoot several times because, I don't know, like one antennae would fall or like the neck would, you know, and it's like trying to fix it.
Okay.
It was the biggest setback on my set was that puppet. Even though I'm proud that I made it myself, but the way that it was assembled, I gave it to someone else to assemble. And he did a really, really good job, but the thing is huge. And it's cumbersome, and it's,
Okay, note to self. Actually, let's genetically modify some cockroaches and feed them steroids for the next shoot. Okay, we've got that one. What I'm going to do, guys, because I'm finding this conversation very stimulating, and I think there's a lot of good talk, but I'm going to throw it over to Rodrigo. Let's move into the question and answer session, because we've got a lot of very talented, young, eager Beaver staff here who want to drill you guys with questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Rodrigo, who did the question and answer session. Okay, all yours, Rodrigo.
Perfect. So the first question comes from our intern Ada.
Hello. Hi. So my question is for both of you, actually. You were talking before about things that you did not prepare beforehand and that you had a very, very hard time dealing with on set because you were not ready. Are there things that you did prepare for, but were still a very, very big struggle for you during the process? And it can be on set or in post-production. Any any part of the process?
Was that for me? Okay.
To both of you.
Okay. I'd say, let me see. Yes. I shot my film in Cairo, but as I mentioned, I live in Qatar. So when it comes to editing, I really thought that we did some editing in person, that I could do some of the editing while I was away, and that's not a great idea. Things like sending files over, Cairo doesn't have great internet, so for me the editing process was cumbersome for silly things. Like internet and stuff like that. And it's so when you're editing, if somebody else is editing, so I mean I edit a lot of my films, but that particular one I had given to an editor. So that was I just felt so unnecessary, the obstacles were unnecessary.
Okay.
For me, it's probably what I would say is first is like if you're trying something difficult, you should always have like a really good plan, and then you will find that the plan will go sideways anyway. But at least you have that plan to fall back to. So that's always sort of something to learn from that. But for me, probably that was something that was difficult, was in the editing phase, especially with this film, was in the editing phase when my interest was having some sort of a dialogue between the sounds and the image. And when you edit traditionally and in the flow of how people do their jobs, it's editing, and then it's picture locked, and then it's sound. So sound is basically just an afterthought, and it's just there to push it. So when I was trying to have maybe a sound to influence a scene, to create a mood, that was maybe now we can stretch the scene, make it bigger. It's like no, it's picture locked, so now it's over. So that sort of illuminates something that, okay, so maybe for next time we could try to find some sort of a happy medium to solve this problem. But that it is you find yourself up against these things all the time.
Thank you very much. Now our intern Victor has a question.
Hi. So I was wondering, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I was wondering, given the fact that it's a small budget, you want to respect the actor's time, it's tight budget, tight resources. You have not much time, but I was wondering if you still allow time for spontaneous creativity on sets. If you still allow your actors to maybe improvise some dialogue, or just to let them lead a scene, or let the story tell itself in a way, or if there's just, you have to be too focused and you have to get everything out of the way as quickly as possible.
Well, I would say that's down to you. I mean, you have this amount of time and resources, and maybe the traditional way of doing it is that you do the angles, and then you do it, the way maybe the DOP or the sound guy expects it to be. But if you have sort of an inkling that, okay, maybe I want some improvisations, then you have to make time for that, and tell the AD that this is what I'm interested in. How can we fit that into the schedule? Because you can't just make it up when you're there. It's like, oh no, this was interesting, but you're running out of time. But if you before that have more of a clear idea of what you want to do, I mean, and this is this really sort of empowering idea. I mean, you're in charge of this thing. This is, as a director, this is your film, your vision, and if you fuck it up, it's your fault. But it's also a power to create. You can design that time for yourself. You don't have to listen to the producer saying you should do this or you should do that. But what I want to do, maybe it's best to do some improvisations. Yeah, let's try to organize it.
I think it's in my experience that freedom now that I think about it, is somehow attached to the number of crew, I think. Because when for J'ai le Cafard, I had a relatively large crew. I couldn't. There's just too many people, you know, to kind of communicate with, change up, all of this kind of stuff. It's too disruptive. When I made a film, I was part of a team that made a film, and we were only 5 people, and we had an idea of what we were doing, you know, in that particular day, and we have, say, 3 days to do it. Then, because you're, 3 to 5 people, you can be quite nimble. You can move around quickly. You can change your mind quickly. You can work things through very quickly all together. Then there's a film that I made where it was just me, and I could do what the fuck I want, you know. So I would say maybe it's relative to the size of the crew. So
Thank you.
And now our last question comes from our intern, Uli.
Hi. My question is also about time, because it feels like a lot of beginner filmmakers don't really realize how long it takes to make a movie. So my question is for both of you: how long did it take you from the moment you started writing the script to its first projection, and what do you think slowed you down the most?
Well, I can go first. I think we both made films probably pre-COVID, and then we got stuck in COVID. So for this film, it was a long time. Shooting it before COVID, and then everything got locked down. But because of COVID, I have more time to be creative. So sometimes stuff can happen that allows you to have some. I had a sound designer that was out of work for a year, basically, so we could just, you know, play around. Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that you just have to get used to, like how long stuff takes, and not get discouraged by that. One thing is your own creative process. You get your ideas and you're trying to make something, write a script or make sort of a treatment. And that can be, you know, forever, from a week up to a year, you know, what depends on your process. But then it's the getting it made, that's the depressing part when you're waiting for funding, and that's when you need to have a couple of other projects going. So that's, I guess that's advice. Don't do stuff like one and then you do the next. Have like 3 parallel, because you don't know how your creative sparks go, and you don't know when money comes, or when some person says, oh, he could help you for free or whatever. So it's difficult to say how long stuff takes, but it takes a long time. Get used to it.
yeah. I wrote the script for J'ai le Cafard in 2018. I think it was the summer. And then, like I said, I was learning along the way. So then I had, you know, I heard that there's a way to apply for funding. So I applied for a couple of funds. I was lucky to get them, but like Rolf explained, it takes time. You know, you apply to it and you only know, like, there's about 6 months later whether you got it. And then depending on when those phones are, then you don't know where you will be when you will have enough to start. And one thing I wish that I'd known before is that each grant funders, you know, the funding entities, each one of them has their own policies on how they hand out money. You know, just because you got 10, you know, you're granted 10,000, they're not going to give you the 10,000 all at once. So one grant was saying we can give you this much up front, and when you give us like proof that you started shooting, then we can give you 30%, and then after editing this much. And it's like, well, I need the money to edit, so why am I getting the money after that? So sometimes that can be convoluted, like funding policies can be convoluted. And so in terms of timeline, so it's 2018, early 2018, very early 2018, I wrote the script. At the and it took me a whole year to get that funding. And then once I got the funding, within 3 months, I mobilized and I started shooting the film. Then from that to ready with the sound and everything like that, it took another 8 months after that. But yeah, it was, and I did not have a big plan. Like when I was shooting the film, I don't know who was going to do the sound design. When I shot the film, I did not know who was going to edit it. So I was just like, I'm just going to do this and find out along the way. So I think, you know, if you could save some time by knowing who would be doing all of those things for you, you know, a little bit early on. But like Rolf said, you can knock out a film in 2 weeks, or you can knock it out in a whole year. You know, it always stuns me. At the same time, even though I know this, it stuns me when I hear people say, "Oh, it took 4 years to make this film," or "It took 6 years to make this film." But that is a reality of certain films, and it, when the time is right, the time is right. I'd written a few scripts in 2018. I'm about to shoot one in April, one of those scripts. So it's from 2018. It's just the time right now. At the time, I was just like, I'm not sure I know the right actors or the right space for it. You know, where would I shoot it? You know, as being a nomad for me, everything's open. It's just, at least I know a lot of people who are like, you know, I'm in France, I shoot in France. But I'm like, I'm in Kuwait, I can shoot in Paris. My girls live there. I'm in Qatar, but I can shoot in Finland. I can shoot in Cairo. You know, so it's about the story and where it is, but then sometimes I find that the story can change and I can be rewriting and rewriting and rewriting because there's so many possibilities. You know.
Thank you very much for
another, if I can just add like little thing,
Sure.
that there's always different budgets of making films. So if you focus on the script part and you have that set and you work hard on that, you can make like the short we showed here. I didn't get any funding for that. We just made it, and you find your crew as you go along. Because I think you can make a film on any budget. If you know the core idea, you can make it for nothing in your backyard, or you can make it for $20 million with some Hollywood people. There's always this difference. But if you really want to make it and not wait, if you think, I don't really want to wait for funding, let's just make it and I'll write another one. That's another way of doing it. It's not better or worse. It's just different options, basically.
I think that's fabulous advice, Rolf, and that's exactly what I do. And I'm writing 2 scripts right now, and I'm not waiting for any funding at all. I'm just going to tell them. I'm just going to tell a story. You know, type it out, write it, shoot it, and I think that's great. I have to say, what a pleasure it is to talk to you guys and to have you guys talk to these young, keen ÉCU crew. I always do a little wrap up of what we talked about just to reinforce, and I think that from what I've heard from you 2 guys, very talented filmmakers, is, you know, be aware of where you're filming. The different filming locations have different cultures, and don't get held hostage in a warehouse in Cairo trying to get your credit card working, I think is a big thing. Be careful of conformity. You know, we're independent filmmakers, you know, and what Rolf says is you're the director, and if it's fucked up, it's your fault. So don't be conformist, do it your way, because if you're going to own something that's yours. Have total control. I totally agree with that. You know, directors get a bad rap for being dictators, and, you know, Mr. Springsteen calls himself a benevolent dictator, but they play his songs the way that he asks them to play his songs. And I think as a director, you have to have a vision, and if you're nice and kind and people follow that vision, that really helps. I also think the idea of expressing that you need multiple projects is a big thing for all of us in life in general. I'm a fabulous multitasker, but I just think the idea of having multiple projects help us make more things, because time is not on our side as independent filmmakers. You know, there's many nights spent in edit suites, you know, that you'd probably rather have a glass of wine and having dinner, but, you know, multiple projects saves you time, there's no doubt. And have a plan. I'm a war cameraman. I always, every time I'd go into a dangerous situation, I had a plan to get out of there. And I think as independent filmmakers, I think the idea of having a plan, and as you say, Rolf, it will go sideways. The first time that the dolly falls over and it breaks your lenses and the amount and stuff like that. We all know that, but having a plan is very, very important for me. And but also, and I love what you were saying, May say, is about being nimble. Rewrite your bloody script if you need to. If it's going to cost too much money in Finland, fuck it, write it for Sudan. I think the idea of being nimble, having a plan and being nimble is it's a weird juxtaposition, but I think that it works very well, and it's great advice for indie filmmakers, because I made a film years ago, my very, very first film, and I was so stuck on this actress saying this one particular line, like inordinately stuck I was, because I wrote it. It must be, written by Steinbeck and Hemingway and everything. It's got to be, and she couldn't say it. She just couldn't say it. And I insisted and insisted and insisted. Now I watch the film going, you idiot. Why didn't I just turn around to her and say, here's the meaning of what I want to say. What best works for you? And I think that, I learned a huge lesson in that. And one that I keep with me now. It's like, work with what you've got. And if they can't do this way, do it that way, how can you make it work for the film? So I think, having a plan and nimble is one of the big takeaways for me. Just very quickly, we're going to wrap this up in a second, and I'll get Fanny to roll it out. But I just want to talk about future projects, because I always want to know what ÉCU alumni are up to. May say, what's the next project, the one you're shooting in April?
The one I'm shooting in April is another magic realism film, based here in Doha, set here in Doha, and it's going to, it's a collaboration between myself and a Kuwaiti artist, and she's going to partially animate, we're going to partially animate the film. So it's going to be live action and animation. Together, it's about a biological insight, a speculative biological insight into love and the demise of love. So that's the next one. It's called Constant. And I've got one that I'm trying to get off the ground in Finland. So I'm working with some producers for the very first time in my life, some actual, like, you get the funding, you do that work. And again, like what we were talking about before, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it. It's like, there's so many things that bind that. So I'm, we're still in conversation. I keep telling them, like, I might break up with you. I might just do this on a, like, you say 100,000 euros. I say, I'll do it for 10, so we'll see it. And then I'm writing a feature length film at the moment, but it's in its baby stages. And it's going to be, two middle-aged Arab women on a road trip. That's kind of the framework of it, but it's in its baby stages, and I plan to actually go on a road trip with my bestie, and from Kuwait to Egypt, and just have a camera with us and just get inspired.
Love
what
that.
happens
Love
along
that.
the way.
Love it. Rolf, what have you got up your sleeve, young man?
Well, now I'm going to sound like that sales guy I didn't want to become, but here it goes. So no, I have 4 or 5 actually short film ideas that's bubbling around, and I also have one feature I'm developing with a friend from film school. But these short films, I'm taking sort of the lessons from this short film I had at ÉCU and trying to push it further into making the fragments that always starts a creative process, having those influence the narrative. So not that the narrative comes first and you write it from there, but that you let the surroundings, you let the locations, you let the sounds, you let those things, you develop those things, and then you try to come to a narrative at the end. So basically working a little bit with form and pushing my way of making films a little bit further. So I can skew, I would say I'm more interested in sound and atmosphere and mood than narratives. I'm just trying to skew that up on the list, and having narrative is there but a bit lower. So making those kind of short films.
Well, I don't think I can beat that, but I just love that sense, making film, my way of making films. And I just love that sentence. So, you know, I'm going to leave you. You two, you know, you are ÉCU alumni. We're very proud to consider you as that. We will work you very hard as we start working on ÉCU 2023, and Rodrigo will be in touch with you to help us develop our official selection for 2023. And guided by guys like you, you are storytellers of our generation. We're very happy that you joined us today. My way of making films. I love that. That should be on your business card and a mantra for all of us. Okay, so thank you very much. There's still a little bit of time. If anybody's listening, they want to submit films to ÉCU 2023. We still have some deadlines that need to be met, but it's closing quickly. Again, Macy and Rolf, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much to the ÉCU crew. Rodrigo, the Mexican Superman here, who makes everything work, and everything's right and good about ÉCU. He manages it. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch soon. Okay, ciao. Roll it down for me.